Hello, and thanks for signing on to our video series. My name is Jean-Francois, JF for short, and I'm professional design, development, and teaching test automation frameworks. I specialize in Java with Selenium WebDriver and creating my own custom automation frameworks. Throughout my career of the last 10 years, I've been developing complex Java applications, sophisticated automation scripts, but more recently though, in the past 2 years, I've been teaching the test automation bootcamp program at SQA Solution. I've had over 100 people graduate from my training, but more importantly, I've seen them grow and move forward to be successful at using the skills I taught them in their current career or transitioning to a new one. Our company, SQA Solution, is responsible for staffing QA engineers to well-known companies, both small and big in the Bay Area and beyond. Talking a lot to the hiring managers, letting us know what to key in on, but more importantly, what technology stacks a must know to land a great job in QA. Hence, we develop a 6-week automation test course program costing roughly around $3,000. Yeah, $3,000 isn't a small amount, even though you can probably pay this off after your first paycheck, so we can understand your hesitation to quickly sign up. And that's why we created these series of videos for you guys to understand the quality of our instructions and to better evaluate if this is something you'll be interested in doing. After watching these video lessons, you'll be able to start the path of changing your professional career, allowing you to get paid respectable salary, become an expert in test automation, and to get away from doing your manual, routine, and boring work for any longer. The topic of today's lesson is going to be leading UI testing tools. After watching this video, not only will you know the leading UI testing tools, but also the importance of automating tests, where to get the needed libraries to create these automated tests, an overview of a hands-on project. We'll be looking at an actual test which searches Craigslist for a set of keywords, followed by some recommendations for continued learning, and closing with their homework assignments. Let's go and get started by looking at the leading UI testing tools. Breaking these tools into 3 categories, we'll look at popular core libraries used in creating automated tests, some common testing frameworks that can be used either independently or alongside the core libraries, and finally, some prominent cloud services which can add support for testing on multiple systems with various configurations. Here we have some popular core libraries in the market today. Waiter is a set of Ruby libraries for automating tests written in the Ruby programming language. SOAP UI is a cross-platform functioning testing tool designed to help automatically test APIs like SOAP and REST interfaces. Test Complete is an automated testing tool for the Windows platform. It allows you to record, script, and run GUI tests for applications built using languages such as .NET and C++. RainerX allows you to automate desktop application tests, recording user interactions and playing them back. It is a popular commercial option when running automated GUI and web tests. Squish, which is developed by Frog Logic, is a GUI testing tool for various platform-specific applications, including native Windows and Mac applications. It allows tests to be scripted in languages like JavaScript, Perl, Python, and Ruby. Eggplant is another GUI test automation tool for professional software applications and enterprises. It tests applications developed in languages like .NET, Java, and Flash. Appium is a library used to create automation tests for mobile devices. It's a good tool to look into once you've mastered the basics of using Selenium WebDriver with Java. And finally, Selenium WebDriver is the core library which we'll be covering to create our automation tests for web applications. It's a very popular choice among testers and offers the ability to create tests which mimic the actions of a user takes when interacting with web applications. Next up are the testing frameworks. JUnit is a simple unit testing framework to write repeatable tests in Java. JUnit is used for test-driven development, is one of the standard testing frameworks for Java developers. NUnit is a unit testing framework as well, but built for the .NET languages. It's created from JUnit, but takes advantage of the .NET features. TestNG is a Java testing framework inspired by JUnit and NUnit, however more powerful and easier to use. TestNG is my preferred testing unit framework, facilitating data-driven testing as well as out-of-the-box reporting. Now let's take a look at cloud services. You can integrate your tests with these services, gaining the ability to extend your tests to different platforms. Gridlastics, basically like Selenium Grid, which is part of the Selenium suite, specializing on running tests across different browsers, operating systems, and machines in parallel. However, Gridlastic does not need an actual testing lab environment. Sauce Lab is similar to Gridlastic, but includes a mobile testing aspect with a wide range of features and robust user interface. It's my preferred choice when working on large-scale projects. CloudBees, which is another cloud service, mainly focuses on continuous integration, but also allows unit testing. With all these different components, it raises the question of what's the importance of automating tests. When managing large projects, speed is drastically improved with automating tests over manually testing them, allowing development to flow much smoother for a project using the Agile methodology. This allows you to run regression tests using different data. You're also given the ability to run the test any number of times being executed in parallel. The whole process promotes organized and structured documentations of specific test cases. Using various data will also allow you to discover unique defects based on the data passed to the test. Compared to manual testing, the automation process increases bug reporting. Overall, this organized approach will allow testers to create more productive tests. When it comes time to include library you need within your project, you'll want to start by checking out the company's website. You can usually find it by doing a quick Google search with whatever tool you want to include and following the links to documentation. For example, Selenium WebDriver jar file can be located at seleniumhq.org. Alternatively, you can use a project management tool like Maven to automatically include the library through the configuration of a specific.xml file located at the project's root directory. Next, we'll look at the hands-on Craigslist project we mentioned earlier. Here you can follow along to see an automation test in action. For the hands-on project for this lesson, we're going to cover creating automation tests for Craigslist. Based on a bunch of keywords, we're going to look for job postings that match that criteria. Alright, so let's get started on looking at a checklist and what we want to make sure that we have installed. First, you want to make sure you have an older version of Firefox. That way for compatibility. Here's a link to where you can find old releases. I'm currently using version 43. You'll want to install JDK7 on Oracle's website. If you follow that link, it'll take you to the archives for version 7. Currently, version 8 is the newest version. You also want to install Git. That's going to basically give you the Git software so that you can clone a repository on your local system. You also want to install Eclipse. I'm going to be working with the Mars release. Currently, Neon is the most current release, and you'll want to go to that link if you want to get a version of Mars. And finally, you'll want to clone the repository, which we're going to be covering throughout this lesson. So with making sure that you have all those items, also want to probably check documentation to make sure that you install everything correctly. And with the JDK7, you also want to set your path variable. So make sure you set your path variable if you're going to be using on the command console when trying to execute your scripts. Alright, so that all in place, we're going to go ahead and start Eclipse up. So you're going to want to go where you installed your Eclipse. I'm going to have Eclipse, it's on my directory. And then I'm going to go ahead and open Eclipse. Default, the workspace is inside your user directory. I would recommend that you maybe put it inside Dropbox as an extra version control if you're using just Git. But I'm going to leave where mine is. Now I'm also going to go ahead and go directly in that directory. So once I go into that directory, my workspace, I'll be able to right click there and start the bash shell right here, and I'm going to run the command git clone and then paste that URL of my repository so I can get the coding files to my system. So that's going to be git-clone https github.com/ and Craigslist project.git. Once you do have those files cloned into your workspace, you'll want to then import that project into Eclipse. So file, import, existing Maven project. Once in the workspace directory, it should recognize my project and then be able to import that. A quick overview of the actual project items. We have the README, which is going to contain information about the current project. POM file is going to include any dependency or any other libraries inside that POM. Most notably that we're using testng to be able to create our test. We're logging our information with log4j. Apache POI is going to be used in reading Excel documents. And there's another Apache POI. As opposed to the other one, this is the newer form of Microsoft Office documents. So we'll need that for reading Excel, newer version of Excel documents. And we have the Selenium, which is what we're using to drive the test. These are just setting up our sources and targets to be compliant with 1.7, as well as setting up test suites. Now these test suites don't actually all work if you try to run them. You have them over here because Firefox is the one that's enabled so that we can run this by default. If you'd want to run any of these specifically, you'd want to just be able to right click and then testng, or run as and then testng. And then you'll be able to run all your scripts using that specific browser. But you'll want to make the modification by looking inside of your basic auto test. And you'll want to make sure that you enable all these. Right now, there only is Firefox that is enabled to true. The other ones you'd want them to also be enabled to true, and then you'd want to select the test suite that you want to run. But because we'll be only executing them throughout just right-clicking and that specific test itself, and that's going to be the Craigslist test. So we're just going to want to right-click on that and run that as testng, and that should cover the test running properly. But let's go ahead and look at what we have here. Basically, we have a constructor. It's extending the basic auto test. So a lot of functionality is coming from that basic auto test, so that our test can generally have same pieces throughout different tests. So we can kind of really build that framework. Here we call the super constructor, and just that we're setting the base URL so that we can access the base URL anytime. Now our actually test resides in this method, which is annotated with @test annotation. Here's another method that we'll be talking about, and that kind of goes to the details of going to a certain page and searching there. But let's start up at the top. First we have a variable keywords, and that's going to hold the QA automation keywords, and that's what we're going to be searching on Craigslist. Next we have a variable. Notice that all these // are comments. That's just going to help you know what each line really does. Here we have another variable, string type, and we're going to set that to what the page that we expected. Once we actually do a search on Craigslist, it brings us to a page, and I'll show you where that is. You'll see at the page title, it's basically, depending on what area you're creating your Craigslist test, we're using the SF Bay area, and then whatever keywords, and then it's going to end with hyphen Craigslist. This needs to match exactly to what the actual page title is. Later on down the line, we actually do get that title by calling this method of the driver class getTitle, and that's going to set it here so that the final line can assert that what the page that actually we got is what we expected to get. So that's where the expected title comes in. Here we call the method goToPage and search for the keywords. So the keywords are being set as QA automation. So when this method is called, those keywords are being passed the method. So that kind of drives the test from being at that point to coming into this method. And that's where we actually say to go not only to the base URL, but we also want to go to that search directory. Then we actually go to the searching in jobs. That way results aren't for any sales on Craigslist, but just really those jobs. Then we actually locate the search field, and we find the element by the ID query. So let's go ahead and start looking at that real actual test. We're going to go to Craigslist. Now here, basically what I'm trying to say is you want to go into jobs directory, and here's where you're going to want to search. And if we right click on here, we say inspect element, you'll notice here that that field itself has an ID it's equal to query. So that's where we're getting the attribute ID being set to query and using that information to be able to interact with that search field. Once we actually do enter in QA automation, we then will end up with a results page, and we're going to want to capture that number 55, as well as validate that we are on the page SF Bay Area jobs searching for QA automation on Craigslist. So see how the actual title is what our expected result should be. Our expected title should be. So here we have the expected title, SF Bay Area job. So we're validating on the assertion that that actual expected is correct, and that'll give us whether the test is a fail or pass scenario. And this is where we left off, where the query field is actually being gathered into the variable search field, which is of type web element, and that's going to be able to hold us access to accessing that field. So we'll call the method clear to clear out any of the content that might be there. Most likely, if you use something that automatically fills in or auto-completes your fields, you might have content in your field before you have a chance to type anything in, as well as the send keys we're going to use to send a different set of keys, and that's going to be the keywords, which is what we passed into the method, which is what we set by the keywords variable QA automation is the exact item we're searching for. And then we're going to submit the form field. That submit will actually mimic an enter key as the form is being entered. Then we'll control return back to where our method was called, and we'll get the number of results as a variable of type string, and that's going to represent the number of results that we see. And here we saw the 55. If we inspect that element, we'll notice that that is of type class range 2. And there's no other elements on the page that are of that type class, so we're safe to use that locators. So here, where we want to log, we're calling the get log to get the logger, calling the info method. As you're learning, you'll want to use the dot operator. The dot operator will allow you to see what available options you have. For example, the info and debug and error type of ways to send a message. And we're using information as just information on what the number of results we have and for that number of results. As we got that element from the range 2, and we did that by class. So we were able to capture the number of results into that string variable, and then we're able to log it as a number of results on the first page. So with all that being put in place, the actual test, we do that final assertion, I think we're okay to safely run this code now. So we're going to go ahead and run as, and do a 10 extend G test. Notice here it's setting up the Firefox driver. Now it's going to go to the base URL. Then from that base URL, the next thing that probably happens is that we go into that actual page. If we open up Firefox, we'll notice that that was all executed through Firefox. We actually close it and go ahead and run it again so that you can see that. Browser's being open for the job section, should be QA automation. And if we look into our logs, I'm going to refresh that folder. And you'll notice I ran it twice, so I have that first execution at the top, and that second execution again. And that line with the number of results on first page for QA automation is 55. So that kind of symbolizes a basic run. If you want to take a screenshot, you do have that option as well. So here, let's just say that we got to that page with the results. Let's go ahead and take a screenshot. Use this in the dot operator. Take screenshot. Let's give it a file name. Craigslist results. Now if we rerun it one more time, and now this time we're going to refresh that screenshots folder, and we should see that screenshots results image inside of there. So if we go inside the project itself, look at screenshots, and open up that photo, you'll notice that those are all the results. That we had on the page. It actually takes a screenshot of the whole web page, so you'll be able to see all of them in one screenshot. And that pretty much concludes the hands-on project. See if you could actually go ahead and what you can modify to get this working on a different site. At any point, if you want to see the available options for using the driver, which is probably what you want to first start off getting very comfortable with, that's going to be after the get driver method and using the dot operator and your available options there. Moving forward, I've listed some books I would recommend to get you on the right track. Java Test will teach you enough fundamentals to cover your basics. Thinking in Java is a lot more in-depth and covers more advanced Java concepts. Head First Java is an enjoyable book to get you in the mind of thinking about OOP concepts. Instant Selenium Testing Tool Starter is roughly 50 pages and points you in the right direction on creating automated tests with Selenium WebDriver. Selenium WebDriver Practical is a more thorough approach to understanding Selenium WebDriver. Test automation using Selenium WebDriver with Java is a good reference, which also covers some best practices. Selenium Testing Tools Cookbook offers various examples of specific use cases. And finally, mastering Selenium WebDriver would be recommended for more advanced topics once you've mastered the basics. For a follow-up exercise, try creating an automation test which searches job postings on Monster.com. Post your link to your solution on GitHub in the comment section below. And check out our next video to reveal the correct implementation to this exercise. Thanks for watching our video lesson. In the next video, we'll look at the topic of using Java for test automation, where you'll learn why it's important to know Java when developing automation tests. See you in the next video, and make sure to look out for our email.